Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, coming to you live from Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Going to be teaching over the next couple days here in Newcastle at RQ Stables. Now, this is the first time I've tried to do a live Q&A session live on Facebook as well as on Instagram. So whatever platform you're watching from, be sure you check in and let us know that. So today we've got a question that comes to us from Madeline. And Madeline says, I used to think that my pony was disrespectful before I learned how a horse actually thinks. And now I realize I have an issue with separation. I know she tries so hard, but the instinct is just overwhelming. And sometimes I wonder, should I let her just deal with it herself rather than interfering? And this to me is a really interesting question. And unfortunately, there's not enough backstory for me to have a lot of real details about where and when and sort of what situation is happening in these or what sort of conditions are happening in these situations when our horse is feeling this separation anxiety. So there's going to be potentially a couple different ways that we go about it, depending on, again, that whole environment, all the things taking place at that point. So the first thing that I want to say for Madeline and for anybody else that might have an issue with anxiety with their horses is, look, if we're the owners or the handlers or the trainers, we're the caretakers, it is our responsibility to help them overcome that anxiety. That's a role that we have taken on when we've decided to have those horses in our lives, right? It's our job to prepare them to handle these situations in the best way possible. So it's absolutely our responsibility to help them with that. Now, if this separation anxiety that they're going through is when they're with us and they're anxious about being with the other horses, with the rest of the herd, to me, that's going to first make me look back at myself and say, how am I helping my horse to feel better about themselves when they're with me? A good friend of mine, and you may have heard me quote this many times, a good friend of mine says, it doesn't matter what I think of your horsemanship, and it really doesn't even matter what you think of your horsemanship. The most important thing is how your horse feels about himself when he's with you. And this is potentially a situation where the horse is not feeling so hot about themselves when they're with us. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is take a look at how I'm handling myself, how I'm handling that horse. What do our sessions look like that my horse is feeling anxious and would rather be with someone else than being with me? This someone else in this case being the herd, potentially, by the sound of it. So that's something that I really want to be thinking about with our horses, is how am I making them feel when they're with me? And to me, I want them to feel like they're the greatest thing on four legs. I want them to feel like they can be braver and smarter and more successful just because I'm around. You know, we've all got people in our lives that we feel that way with, right? And we want to be around them more. And I think our horses would be there, or should be, in a similar situation where they want to be around us because they feel better because they are. So getting back to something a little bit more specific here for Madeline and for anybody else going through this with their horse, if we've got the horse that's anxious, that doesn't want to be around us, again, think about how we're reacting to this. If they're wanting to be with their friends, or if they're wanting to be back with their stablemates, and we're big and obnoxious and you know, just really harsh with our aids, well, gee, is that horse going to want to hang around us? Think about it. If you and I were dancing together and you'd rather dance with somebody else, and so I'm grabbing you and pulling you hard and snatching you around and, you know, maybe saying not so nice things to you, you're probably not going to want to hang around with me. You're certainly not going to want to dance with me. You definitely want to be back there with somebody else. So we want to think about that. I'm not saying let our horse take over. Never ever saying that. That's not a situation that makes sense to the horse, because then it shows that we're kind of lacking leadership in that way. The horse is going to feel more confident when they're getting that leadership from us. But, you know, we want to think it's got to be equal parts justice and mercy, right? I don't want to do too much, but I want to make sure that I'm doing enough to get responses, to get that respect that we talk about. And respect to me comes from consistency. So I want to keep that in mind. And that horse that's anxious, when they do finally focus on us, even if it's just for a brief moment, it might mean spending a lot of time just hanging out there with them, so they realize that they can feel okay with us. So lots of slow work. Lots of work that helps that horse to feel confident, and that could be different for every horse. So unfortunately for the horse in this question, I don't know the horse, I don't know the owner as far as I know, so I can't give very specifics that way, but we want to think more theoretically. How are we making that horse feel about himself when he's with us? That to me is the most important thing. Now let's take another situation, because again, I didn't get a lot of details in this question. Let's say that this horse is not with us in this case. Maybe she's talking about separation when the horse is out by itself, or when the buddy next to it gets taken away. That's a whole nother idea, but it is still our responsibility to help that horse to overcome that. So that would be, again, how do we handle that horse? How does that horse feel about itself when it's with us? If we can work in a way that builds that horse's confidence, that's going to carry over to when they're not with us. So that's something we want to think about. In any situation, whether he's with us or not, it's how did we leave him feeling? Confident, unconfident, braver, smarter, not so much, right? We want to think about that. Hopefully, Madeline and anybody else listening that maybe has this issue, hopefully that gives you some things to think about. I know it's not very specific, and if there's a chance, Madeline or anybody else out there, if you want to send some videos over with maybe some specific things of what's going on with your horse in specific situations, that might be a little easier for me to help clear up some of this stuff. Otherwise, we're just going to go by that theory. It doesn't matter what I think of your horsemanship. It doesn't matter what you think of your horsemanship. What matters most is how your horse feels about himself when he's with you. So hopefully that was helpful, again, to Madeline who asked the question, and to anybody else out there who's listening. Again, this is my first time trying to go live both through Facebook and through Instagram. So however you're listening, please let me know, check in, let me know how the audio quality and the video quality came through. I'd like, if it works, to be able to do some more of these as we go. So question of the day. How can you help your horse specifically to feel better about himself? What is one thing that you do with your horse that makes him feel really good about himself? I'd like to read about that. Give me that in the comments section. Give me that in the maybe in a DM or a private message or something like that. Let me know about that. And please, as always, if you have any questions, feel free. Email, DM, private message, send a pigeon, it doesn't matter. Send me a message, let me know what your question is. You keep asking questions, and I'm going to keep talking about horses. Thanks so much, Kay.